All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Long time no see. I hope today was as good as possible. So we're going to take a moment to go around the horn here. Rebecca, it's good to have you with us today. Welcome to the class. I hope you're feeling better. And so let's go around here and see if anybody has any updates of things. Saturday was a time to share what school was like. So you got back to school today, and so did it go any better today for anybody, or was it just another day of challenges and just a mess? Just a mess. Leah.
So my principal knows that I'm in this course, this program. And so he's the only admin for our school. We actually just, for the first time in the history of the school, got an assistant principal this year for 2 days a week. But anyway, we caught 3 of our 7th grade boys vaping in the bathroom today. So I got to be a part of kind of supporting that investigation today and into tomorrow. So, yay.
Oh, an investigation into vaping in the bathroom.
And they're 12.
Welcome to my summer, Leah. We
Yeah.
had to like expel them from summer camp. By we, I mean me, for vaping in the bathroom. She got caught 3 times.
You know I'm old, but somebody's got to explain vaping to me. I mean, what would you get out of vaping? I mean, they got that weird looking thing and they just suck on it, and
it's got nicotine in it.
Nicotine and candy flavors.
Yeah. Or melon like mine.
That's when it's not THC.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a little different.
You didn't have to explain that, but it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just nicotine and candy flavors.
Yeah. Well, whatever. It's another challenge for us, but so you get to continue the investigation tomorrow, Leah. This could be like a 5-day investigation, probably. And it's amazing how those kind of just keep going, because, you know, if you didn't actually see them doing it, then the parents are going to defend the child. And then you get into that and that, and that, it just keeps going and keeps going. And you just kind of sit there and say, But anyway, yeah, that might be a tough one to beat. Can anybody beat the vaping in the bathroom?
I can.
Somebody can beat it.
So after
Rebecca, okay.
I had a student walk out of my room and not return. And I called 2 assistant principals and the front office, and they told me that they had to contact trace and could not deal with it. So I'm hoping the student made it home okay, because I had a class of 30 something. So.
And Rebecca, where are you?
Lake Norman.
Lake Norman. At what at high school?
Yes.
Okay, Lake Norman High School.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one in Dooley.
Yes.
All right.
Well, I hope he or she made it home safely too, but you do what you can do. And I think we were talking on Saturday that every administrator and my other 2 cohorts say the same thing, that you can't do anything else. You're going to be contact tracing, period. And teachers are left to fend for themselves, and it's just an unbelievable mess. And you folks are amazing. But Dale and I were wondering if you're going to come back tonight. So we talked Saturday afternoon, and I said, Lord, with all those stories, I said, well, it'll be a wonder if they want to come back. But we are so glad you did, and thankful that you are with us, and thankful for what you do every day. And we can't get over. We talked again today. It's just a terrible time, and I mean, it's a terrible time to be an educator, that's for sure. But we have said that before, and it will get better. It will. I believe that, and it's easy for me to say, but I do believe it. I think some people are seeing what your lives are like, and I hope that's going to alter the view. So, Phyllis.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I'm running a little late. I had a student today, a fourth grader, telling another student that I overheard that she was gender fluid or something like that. And I said, well, I never heard that. I said, what does that mean? Well, Miss Marshall, I don't identify with being a boy or a girl. And so she was dressed like a boy today. So I said, well, how do I dress you today? And she said, well, I want to be a boy and I wish I had boy parts. Wow.
I will tell you, I really didn't have to deal with that too often in school. That's kind of taken a life of its own in recent years. So I don't know. That's that's tough. And
I have Phyllis, I don't know how you do deal with that either, but I have a pink potty pass and a blue potty pass. And when I told the kids I had a pink potty pass for the girls and a blue potty pass for the boys, not thinking any, it just is what it is. They said, well, what if we don't identify as either of those things? I said, grab them both and run on out the door and say they're purple. I don't know what to tell you. But I mean, I teach high school, so I kind of got to be careful about stuff like that. But,
Yeah, she said she wished, when it came to the bathroom thing, she said she wished that there was another bathroom, not a boy or a girl, but just the bathroom. I don't know, fourth grade, her parents are okay with it. Some days she wears the rainbow shirts, fourth grade, I say, you haven't lived life yet. Why are you, okay, I'm gonna leave.
yeah. Well, in fourth grade, I don't know that they know enough to know which one they'd rather be. So I think the only semi joke I could make of this, which is not a joking matter, is that when I would go in the days when we could go regularly to concerts and ball games, I think most females wish they were a male, because the male line would go real quick to the bathroom and the female line would just be long. That might be the only time that people would wish they could switch gender on a regular basis. So, well, listen, everybody, we are so glad that you're with us tonight and thankful for you. And so tonight we're going to dive back into the principal book, and we're ready for Elizabeth and Rebecca. We're going to catch you up. I thought, in fact, rather than you going all of these, let's go with you in chapter 1 first. And then you'll wrap us up with chapter 15. But I don't think we're going to get to that tonight. But if we did get to that tonight, then that would be a lot on you to have to present all those cases and everything. So let's do chapter 1, and we'll talk about the cases associated with that. And then Elizabeth and Heather, y'all will follow, and then Ann and Rebecca will be at the end if we have time. But we do want conversation, and these cases and these chapters are more important in our view than the other cases. Not that the other cases that we'll do the remainder of this part aren't important, but we're going to cover these thoroughly. So at 8 o'clock, we cut it off. So let's have a good time talking about them tonight.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. I gotta move you guys. Oh no, you guys moved again. I feel like I haven't done this in forever. Okay, so chapter 1, the beginning part of chapter 1 had a lot to do with things that were covered later on in the chapter. So I'm gonna breeze through that, but the whole thing was about how the principal is involved and influences the school. So let me minimize you guys. Sorry. Okay, so the principal role is under the umbrella of school improvement. The principal has morals and ethical challenges to build the community. The principals are accountable for the academic progress of all students, and they must facilitate social and emotional development of all students. Follin suggests that this means making a difference in the life chances of all students. More of a difference for disadvantaged because they have further to go. So main thing the principal influences and brings with them their beliefs and their philosophies, and they also lead by example. So one thing, and we learned in our other classes, is that you do have to lead by example to give the credibility to the cause, and everyone has to have a common cause. So then we had the social systems theory. And the challenge is to address both of these needs, the institutional and the personal needs within the school system, to create congruency, and congruency equals productivity. Additionally, congruency creates interdependence between individuals and the organization, resulting in enhanced growth for the individual and greater productivity for the organization. The principal should decide the right time to influence the organizational expectations towards a direction, or just let them go. Okay. So for school improvement, one thing, and I stated before, is that the principal leads by example, and that creates the credibility. So when the school improvement is decided, they want to always focus on how to promote growth with the students and how they can reflect upon it, usually data driven. Okay, and then Morgan presented the organization as metaphors, and you guys may have heard this. I heard it earlier on, the schools as machines, where they're basically like, they just go through the system and produce. They just follow a structure, almost like if you clock in every day, you follow that pattern and clock in. So the leaders, they control, they have that power and the knowledge. They just manage, so they don't adjust. And then they're traditional in their ways they maintain the school and manage. Then you have organisms, and what that means, it's like a natural system. So they do grow and they have adaptive qualities. They are centered on interdependence and collaboration. They're responsive and open, and the leaders serve as a facilitator and unites the organization. And then you have the brains. So if the school acts as the brains, what they do is they have a problem finding and a problem solving method. So they emphasize on reflecting and also analyzing and looking at data, and then trying to find ways to, if they need to readjust their goals or their pathway, then that's called the problem finding. So the leaders here, they're facilitators, they're free flow of communication, and they exchange ideas. So they like to empower others. Didn't go. Okay. And then you have the phases of consciousness. You have the first phase is survival, where you're motivated. So everyone goes through this, also the principal, as they start adapting. They're motivated to stay and remain safe. They're predictable. And then they move into phase 2, where it's social interaction. They appreciate the help of others, and they start organizing with a common goal. Then you start develop individuality where people start getting creative and they all work together. They still use their individual creativeness and move towards the common goal. And then phase 4, where it's global systematic perspective and the whole community, everyone's working together for that common goal, the beliefs and student growth. Okay, so this was my first case study. I wish I was dead. So you're the principal of an elementary school with the enrollment of 530 students. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. You spent the day before at district meetings and also this morning at district meetings. When you go to your office, you're reviewing mail, memos, notes, things like that, and you see a note on your desk from a 5th grade teacher. And stapled to the note, there is an essay. So the note says, I think you ought to see this. And when you read the student's essay, it says, but I will never get to have these things. Sometimes I wish I was dead. Sometimes I want to kill myself. So what would you do and how would you respond?
All right, so Rebecca has thrown it out to us here, and she certainly will give her opinion as well. First of all, did the teacher do the right thing?
No. Teacher should have talked to somebody the day it happened. Intervention should have occurred when she got that essay.
All right,
To somebody, not email, not leave it in somebody's mailbox, talk to them. Yeah, Mary.
I mean, that's an immediate thing. You gotta do it right then.
all right, so good for you. That's step one. If this gets on your desk as an administrator, then you need to be, obviously you got to act on it for the student's sake, but you need to eventually act on it with the teacher because that is a major mess up. So then what happens? You as the principal.
Go to the school counselor / psychologist for the child to talk to.
Okay.
Have a refresher session with all the teachers about protocol of how to handle stuff like this.
All right. Are there notifications that need to go past your notifying the counselor?
The parents.
Aren't we mandated? Yeah. Don't we have to contact a parent about something like that?
Well, I'll let Dale comment on the law, but because I think you're going to have some similar cases to this when you get with him.
Right.
But I think you'd better.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely got to contact parents, but if certainly would talk to somebody in the guidance realm just to see if this child has had problems before, you know, I mean.
Isn't there certain cases where if this is occurring, I want to say like it seems like that statement is very urgent, but if there's more other sort of behaviors or actions that might have been reported by other teachers recently, the counselor, the ASAP needs to get involved, but also the parents and the resource officers in case they do need to be on like suicide watch.
So I think this is one of those team events, isn't it? That certainly the parent needs to be brought in quickly because all of us know that if the student does what we would pray they wouldn't, then we have the issue of why wasn't I notified? But beyond that, I mean, it is the right thing to do. So you have these support mechanisms in place through through your counselor, through, and yes, I agree that the SRO, if you have one regularly at your school, would need to be involved to be on the lookout as well. But you also, and we've seen this, haven't we, that you have the child who, you know, the old proverbial cries wolf, you know, that is always saying this to get the sympathy note, and it begins losing its effect. And then of course, right when you think this happens all the time is when the unthinkable happens. So I think there are protocols that you take, and the principal would need to act immediately to get all of these components involved, beginning with, in my opinion, the notification of the parent. Dale? Are you
All
with
right.
us?
All right, I'm with you. When the teacher got this, if school was still in session, their first official act would be to contact the guidance office. And if the school, if it was after school and they were grading papers, then they would be legally required to contact Child Protective Services. That's your first step, is the reporting piece. Everything else flows from that. And so you get in touch with your counselor together, you do a report to Child Protective. If they've already gone home for the day, you're required to do that Child Protective. That's first. Then you inform your administrative team, and it goes from there. But it's just like when a crime has occurred, just like when we have the one where the bus is involved with a wreck, you always call police, you call 911, you always call child. You got to do the legal thing first, because you don't want in any way to be accused of covering up or stonewalling or any of those things. So your reporting is always first. Then, of course, we would involve school administration, parents, all those people. But one of the reasons why we call CPS first is the reason the child might be suicidal is because of abuse in the home. And just telling the parents that may be the worst thing that we can do. And so always do the legal thing first, and then the ethical follows behind that. But one of you made a point in the chat. We would obviously need to go over the protocol with our faculty again, that, you know, first things first, always call the law, period. You know, we can inform everybody else in the district later, including the principal and assistant superintendent, We always contact the authorities first. We never want there to be a case where we could be accused of trying to cover up or stonewall or delay. It's always the cover up that gets you in court. That's always what gets you.
All right, so this one is, so if that comes to the desk of any teacher, the teacher's first move is to the counselor.
Correct.
And then, and the counselor will handle it with law enforcement.
With Child Protective Services, who will bring in law enforcement if needed.
Okay.
That's correct.
And if it makes it to your desk as a principal, the same protocol.
Same protocol. That's a required, you know, it's
Child
not just,
Protective Services.
that is correct. That is correct. And every county has those.
Oh, yeah.
So, and they should be on speed dial somewhere in the building.
I've been involved in something a little similar to this before. And one thing, well, you said something about a kid crying wolf, and you get to a point, and especially with high schoolers, you know, they every other day it seems like something's, you know, catastrophic has happened to them, and they just want to take themselves out. But one thing that happened once before, not specifically to me, but a teacher talked to another teacher, and the girl told her that it, you know, just she always says that, blah, 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 blah. And not that anything came of it. The child didn't do any harm to themselves, but it came out that in several of the classes or her classes, this behavior was going on, and the teacher got in trouble, justifiably so, for saying things like that to other teachers. So I just warn you that if it does happen, you don't need to talk to anybody else. Just go take care of it with the counselor. So.
All right, Rebecca, you got another one?
Yes. Okay. So, okay. There's too much on my screen. I can't see it. Okay. So there is basically a fight between two boys, and one of them claims that the other one called him the N-word. When the teachers broke it up, they were asked by the principal what happened and if they knew, and they said no. So this is common in this school. A lot of the fights are driven by race or ethnic controversy, or just anything like that. And this school is a magnet program where half of the students are bused. So there is a diverse population, and you are currently a brand new principal to this junior high school and also to the county. So what are the next steps for these specific two students? And then what would you do internally in the school to start fixing the problem?
All right, so this one is all too common as well. And so we've got, an accusation of you called me this, and then they, then they get into an altercation, and it says that most are racially driven. So you're the new principal. What do you do? So who has some thoughts? We have a school that's not just, if you read all these bullet points, it's not just racially diverse, it is economically diverse. So you have the haves and the have-nots, if you will, and then you have the different racial demographics. How do you bring these people together if you're a new principal?
So personally, I feel like, because my first year teaching, I moved to a different state, and it was completely a culture shock, just with the way of life, traditions, all of that. I feel like to understand the community, the principal needs to start getting involved in the community and maybe creating a relationship with the students to start trying to maybe develop a task force of different community members and students and faculty to see what sort of interventions or programs can be implemented into the school.
All right, and so we've talked about this before with, one of the good ways to make some kind of progress is to form a task force and finding people to serve on it, whether you're talking about students or community members. what about the culture of the school? How is what is the role of faculty on this? I'm not sure that a principal can single-handedly just say, okay, we're going to change the culture here. So how does the principal get the faculty involved in a cultural shift?
Well, it says
I
that the
think that it
school
would
is,
be wise to start a committee and a school initiative that celebrates diversity and incorporates like monthly activities or lessons or something that people can get behind and show that they're actively addressing.
But I also think you would have to start with
Yeah.
teacher training. I think Leah put it in the comments that school-wide, they would need to address culture, and it really starts with the teachers, because I don't know where the incident occurs, it doesn't say, but the teachers were like, well, we weren't there until after the fight started, so we have no idea what happened. So if like it happened in the hallways, where the teachers in the hallways monitoring, or where did this occur? So it kind of just sounds like they just didn't want to be involved in that, and that's not okay.
It says in the thing, it says you're always crime prejudice, and then it says even the teachers are sick of it. So apparently there's some sort of animus between the teachers too, and everything that's going on. So yeah, I think that needs to be addressed first.
Yeah, it's, you folks know, and you're certainly seeing it now more than ever, that you can't be everywhere. But clearly, administration can't be everywhere either. So it becomes incumbent upon us to be visible, so that, and at least we have eyes on things and ears on things to be able to know some of what occurred. Again, going back to Leah's investigation of vaping in the bathroom, we can't be everywhere to see like bathroom fights or what really triggered the start of this or that. But oftentimes it is something that occurred on a bus earlier. Oftentimes it's something that occurred in the neighborhood. And so, you know, kids unfortunately bring to school the feelings of their parents about these diversities as well, whether it's economic or ethnicity. So we have a lot of things to battle, and it seems to me that that we have to be unified as a school faculty of how we need to proceed with it. So there needs to be some serious dialogue among the adults in the room, which is the faculty. I mean, some of us have dealt with junior high. We talked about that on Saturday. These kids, whether they're middle school or junior high, whatever you want to call them, you're going to get all kinds of drama with those folks. So there has to be some adults to lay out some things to do. So I do think that is a beginning point. But this seems to be a very significant issue that needs to be addressed in a larger scale, it seems to me as well. That if we're going to figure out how to handle this, that there needs to be, even in junior high, some student leadership with this, and there needs to be some community involvement with this. So you know, the principal's got work cut out for her. She's going to have to bring in a number of people. And, you know, this is one of those things, and Dale, being in CMS, I bet you he has all kinds of stories with this, and I could tell quite a few as well. That this is one of those things where you as an administrator want to say, I don't have time to put this group together and this group together and this group together to try to fix this. I'm going to tell you, when you become an administrator and you deal with an altercation, keep track of how much time you spend on that, because it literally will take you a day. By the time that you have to break it up, calm things down in the rest of the school, call the parents, call the law, get all of these things involved, it will take, and find out it's always the other person started it. So by the time you get to the end of it, whatever you had on your agenda for that day, none of it will get done. So to be proactive with it, even though it will take significant time, is worth the time spent. And so I'm, you know, I read this and think back to experiences 20 some years ago. And, you know, I was blessed with a tremendous school resource officer who was African-American, and he and I were able to kind of co-work. This is in a high school, kind of co-work through some things that ended up, Jennifer, you're at North Gaston. Gary Clemmer was his name, and he's not still a school resource officer, but I never will forget Clemmer. And we had next to no, well, I don't even recall a racial issue we had. So I think it's just important to find the right people to talk to the students, and that was able to be done. And I think that's the first thing you got to do as a principal. Dale, what stories you have on this one?
Okay, so one of our activities that you're going to have when we do the second half is to interview an AP about due process and discipline, and ask them what surprised them most and what they're supposed to tell you and what they all will tell you. But to Steve's point is how long it takes to deal with these things. This could be a 2 or 3 day one. Here, you know, you need statements and all those. Lee pointed out that in the short term, you need to be doing restorative justice. It's more about, you know, getting things straightened out than punishment. So on the short term, you do due process, collect your statements, you know, work toward restorative adjustment, conflict management, those kinds of things with these kids. On the macro level, as Steve said, also you've got to do some programmatic work in your school and in your community. Now in CMS, in the early, I guess about 1990 through 92 or so, when John Murphy was superintendent, we did a lot of these junior highs like this, where some of the communities we bused the lower wealth kids or the minority kids in and created magnets all throughout the district in junior highs. And then in others, we bust kids from Mint Hill back to JT Williams. So we had both of these. And in either of those cases, you had a segment of the population that didn't want to be there. And you had parents, and it was very hard to deal with those parents because they didn't want their kids being bused there, or they didn't want those kids bused to their school. And so it's, you know, on the macro level, you've got to start some programs in schools. Wake County buses for diversity. Just Mary pointed that out. She's in Fuquay. And so you have people who are not happy with the school population, and the people who dreamt up these ideas, that like on the school board, they don't have to deal with them on a daily basis, but you have to do a lot of community organizing and work with restorative justice, put diversity programs in, and do those kinds of things. Now, the thing that you can't do is what I always wanted to do, would be to call the parents in and tell them the problem is your kid's an idiot and it's hereditary. But you can't do that as much as you want to. You're not allowed to do that. Well, you can do it once, but that's about it. But a lot of this, as Steve said, is driven from the home and from the community. It's community based, and you can't solve it only within the walls of the school. Yes, you can do on the short term, you can do your due process, restorative justice, those things. But the bigger issue is you're going to have to go outside and try to do some programmatic things in your school and community. Churches are a big help. Your resource officer, I had Isaac Pryor when I was a high school principal. I have Steve Morton when I was a junior high principal, and both of them were really good to work across the communities. And you look for whoever, churches. St. Mark's was always good. When AME Zion Church was really good to work with. You look for community people and resources to try to help you, because this is not a school problem. On the macro level, understand this is not a school problem. This is a community problem. Now, I don't want to get into politics too much here tonight, but 5 or 6 years ago, I would have felt a whole lot better about being able to broker some kind of peace or truce or get along in the community than I feel now. We've become very polarized in the last 5 or 6 years, but that doesn't mean that you don't attempt it. You're going to have to try to find some common ground and get these groups to work together. But this is a community problem, and the people who created it for you, the school board, they don't have to deal with it on a daily basis. But you do, and you can either continue to have all of your daily time eat up, as Steve pointed out, to a day or 2 or 3 processing, doing due process, which takes forever, or you can handle this one from the standpoint of restorative justice and try to get some programs, some partnerships, some stakeholders in place to try to head these things off. If not, this is going to be what you do all day, every day. And Rebecca, tell Yolanda that she needs to come and support you at North. She's mine. She belongs to me, and remind her of that.
She was the only one I did not call today. I called 3 others.
Call her and tell her if she doesn't come and support you, that I'll come and get her, that she knows that she owes me. So she's
Okay.
and that debt is now paid to you.
She always supports me every time I call. So this was the one time I didn't.
All right.
All right. Any other comments on these two? I think that the neat thing about these 2 cases is I mean, some of them are that we talked about on Saturday, and we spent time on, when you get into educational issues, when you get into curricular issues, it's one, it's one facet of it. Both of these are the kind of the managerial function that Dale will preach many times about, and I will preach many times about, that it is wonderful to be a curricular leader. And that is the business we are in, teaching and learning. And Dale said that loud and clear to all of us. But our faculties count on us, our communities count on us, our students count on us to be a managerial leader, to keep the lid on the place, to provide for safety and comfort in coming to school. And if we don't do that, then the curricular piece is not going to happen. And so these 2 cases are a reminder of that, aren't they? I mean, and every one of you, and certainly Dale and I have many memories of cases such as these. Every one of you could give a specific, when I saw this, and it's the same idea. And so I think, again, on this second one, do yourself a favor. As soon as you become a school-based administrator, begin the work of school culture and putting pieces into place, because it will save you a lot on the bad end, if you will. And these things just, in addition to them being just tragic that we have that problem, period, They are so time consuming. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for sharing. Now, Elizabeth was just heartbroken the other day because she was ready. She was ready and fired up to present on Saturday. And I know she said she would have loved to have gone to 6 o'clock on Saturday so she could have presented, but you know, we just finally drew the line and said, no, we are going to cut it off. So Elizabeth, you are up. We are looking forward to this.
Oh, righty. I was actually excited because I saw Leah's presentation, and I also put memes in my presentation. So yeah.
We did enjoy the memes, didn't we?
So I also have memes. So keep your glasses on.
Okay, I've got them. Thank you for recognizing that I cannot see without them.
Okay, can everybody see the presentation or no?
Yes.
Okay. Don't want to lose you guys, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So I had chapter 10, which talks about staffing the school. And I have 3 case studies, so I'm going to get through the meaty portion rather quickly so we can get to that. I like this quote, which actually opens up the chapter, which says, selecting quality teachers may be the single most important thing you do as an administrator. A beginning high school teacher who stays in the classroom for a 30-year career can have had almost 5,000 students under his or her own instruction by the time of retirement. So I thought that was really powerful, especially because we're in a profession where the turnover rates are high and we have high percentages of teachers who leave, you know, between their 1st and 5th years. So the first thing that the chapter covers is the recruitment process. First thing you need to do is determine your staff needs. The chapter talks about teachers come and go all the time. So you need to figure out, if you weren't allowed to fill a vacancy, how are you going to fulfill that instructional need? Is there a grade level that can kind of merge classrooms together so you have that extra teacher? Or do you have like just a floater position that can come in and fill in for that classroom, depending on where in the school year you're at? The second thing you need to do is review your school improvement plan to figure out, is one of our goals, or any of our goals need an extra person or an extra staff member? Another important thing that it talks about was the recruitment process begins with a good position and person description. So on page 205, it gives kind of like a vague description of the position you're trying to fill. And then it gives you an example of a very, very detailed position. And I think all of us have had experience where you're applying for a teaching position and it's kind of vague. There's not a whole lot of meat to it. And other positions where you really spend time digging into the details of it, because you have to be specific about the people you're trying to hire. It also talks about selection being a cooperative effort between the district office and local school. And it goes back to Rebecca's metaphor about machines and brain schools. And so if your school or your district is machine based, then the recruitment process will rely heavily on the district office. But if it's brain based, then it would be a good balance between district and local school. Greatest problem from recruitment comes from having to place transfers, because transfers, as the book details, is like your bad apples that you need to figure out where you want to put or switch to. And then it talks about the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity, and Americans with Disabilities, which just says you cannot discriminate at all, period. And then it moves on to the selection process, which starts with screening, where you review applications. And then you go to discrepancy analysis, which means you're just looking for missing information or any legal issues, because it says that a lot of people like to play themselves up. And so you have to look for those gaps in their applications. Then it goes on to reference checking. Calling is always better than emailing because you can get more details. but it does say you need to be careful with what you ask. There's like certain things that you can't ask. And you if you're hiring, then or if somebody calls you as a principal asking about a previous employee, there's certain things that you can't say. Like you can't say negative things, and you have to stick with the facts. You can't just start gossiping about the previous employee. One question it does say that is good to ask is, if so-and-so would seek a job in your school again, would you rehire? Usually that would tell you a lot about the person you're trying to get. Then it moves on to the job interview. It does recommend that you involve others. Don't do it by yourself, because others give you a variety of perspectives and you can get an insight on their personality and interpersonal skills. It really emphasized that teaching is a people business. So if the person you're interviewing doesn't have good interpersonal qualities, then they're probably not good for the position. It also talks about employee probationary status. Once you do hire somebody, most places have like 1 to 3 years where you can determine whether you want to keep them and renew their contract, or you don't want to keep them. And then it talks about orientation and development of new teachers. A principal is a teacher of teachers, which means you have, as a principal, have to do everything in your power to grow your teachers, to keep your teachers, so that they can perform at their best, thus helping your school perform at their best. And then it goes into teacher tenure, which is defined as a statement of the guarantee of due process, assuring exercise of academic freedom for the teacher by allowing dismissal only for specific causes listed in the tenure law. Tenure, I think we all kind of see it as, oh, they have a permanent job, whether they do it or not. I think it's always had like this negative connotation. At least for me, it has. It's like if that teacher has tenure, she could be sitting there reading a newspaper all day and not teach, but she still has a job. But the book emphasized that it's not like that. They still need to do their job. They still can be fired. It has to be for specific reasons. And so we move on to the termination process. There's involuntary termination and voluntary termination. For involuntary termination, it just says, just because termination is hard doesn't mean you keep that teacher. If that teacher's not doing their job or performing, then you have to kind of clean house because you want the best on your team. Preparation for dismissal. If you are planning to dismiss somebody, you need to, every part of that dismissal action should be carried out on the assumption that it could ultimately go to court, which means every piece of evidence that you gather needs to be factual and documented accurately with dates. And then it goes into a little bit of due process, which means teachers have specific rights. There's substantive due process, which is just, is it fair, and just basic lawfulness, and procedural due process, which means how the law is carried out. Is it you giving fair warning and a fair hearing? It also touches a little on equal rights under our federal constitution. Was the employee treated fair? The courts want to know what you did or what was done to make or attempt to make the person an effective employee. And then there's reduction in force, which is basically when district tells you you need to cut X amount of positions. And of course, that is never easy, and it is gut wrenching, and your school morale will take a hit because you have the hard decision of, deciding who's going to stay and who's going to go and based on what. So you have to be as supportive as you can of the people who are leaving and the people who stay behind. And then voluntary termination, of course, is they recommend that you hold a termination interview, which just means you talk, just like your interview when you get a job, you talk about, what recommendations do you have, suggestions, or how did you feel here, just so you can get a better idea of the kind of school that you have and the impression that they had, so that you can also grow from there. So the first case study that I had is on page 366. And it is, Miss Davis is a bad teacher. You're the principal of pre-K through 5, population 530. And you get, at the end of the day, you're reviewing your mail and you get a letter from your parent. Well, to make it short, the parent basically is talking about Mrs. Davis and how the interactions that she's had with her daughter or in the class is not good. They're denied recess if any one child misbehaves. Mrs. Davis repeatedly tells her students that they are dumb, stupid, ignorant fools, and that their behavior is much worse than her 2-year-old. And even the parent herself was in the classroom at some point, and they were coming back from lunch, and the teacher yelled at the children to sit down and then screamed, waving her arms. And the parent, if the parent was scared, she said, then I can imagine how scared 8-year-old must be. So they want their daughter, Rebecca, to be transferred out, which is a solution for their child, but doesn't help the rest of the class. So they would like to hear from the principal immediately about what she's going to do in regards to that situation. So what would you do? You got a letter about a teacher who's using this kind of language to 3rd graders and 4th graders. I actually think it's 3rd grader.
All right, I love this case study. And so Elizabeth, what would you do?
Well, first of all, I would have to talk to, just come in, pop in unannounced to the classroom to see if any of that was happening, which I would assume not, because, you know, as teachers, we are always on our best behavior, but I'm sure teachers like that would just be on their best behavior when the principal walks in. But just to chime in and see how they're doing, and maybe get a perspective on the rest of the class, and ask, not, I wouldn't say interview, but just informally ask the rest of the class what, if any of these allegations are true. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure 100%. I had something like this happen at my school, my very first year teaching, but not to me. It was a fellow 2nd grade teacher who, there was a student that was claiming that she put because we used a clipping system, and the clothespins were our clipping things. And the student said that the teacher had put the clothespin on his lips, that she had physically put that on his lips. And the student told his mom, and the mom called like the news station and called the police. And then last on the list was the principal. So that teacher was suspended for the week. And then they came and interviewed all the kids to see if that's exactly what happened. So I don't know,
All
I
right.
guess getting the kids' take on it, and then talking to the teacher one-on-one. Or would the legal thing to do be would be to call somebody? I don't know. I'm not sure.
All right, it's fine not to be sure. So this goes back to a few of the things that you talked about, Elizabeth, in the chapter. And, you know, so we talked about tenure, we've talked about all of these other things. Make no mistake, Dale's going to go over in the second half of the course, and maybe even tonight, they'll talk about the 7 things that can get you terminated. But even if we don't want to talk about the termination thing, the case says, I mean, this letter says some problems in Ms. Davis's class. which is third grade. In the past few weeks, our conversations with Rebecca have turned up some disturbing facts. My question is, contact tracing aside, this school is 530 students. Has the principal done anything wrong?
Well, 530 students seems like a small-ish school. So contact tracing aside, I would hope that the principal is out of his or her office and is doing some of these like pop-ins and walk-ins and surprise visits. So this would maybe not come as a surprise to the principal in an ideal situation. Like the principal would already have an idea that something's not quite right.
It says they have an assistant principal as well, doesn't it? And that the letter is to the principal and the assistant principal for 530 students. And it's been several weeks. Is it possible that the assistant principal and the principal, if this behavior were happening, would not know about it?
Let me interject. Do you remember the question that I left you with on Saturday? I typed it in the chat that we would revisit it tonight. The question was, is it more important to do formal observations or do walkthroughs? In terms of knowing what's going on in your building.
Walkthroughs.
There you
Definitely
go.
walkthroughs. Yeah.
There you go. The opportunity, you know, the formal observations, you're rarely going to need those to get rid of teachers. I mean, we'll talk about that in a second. But those walkthroughs keep you apprised of what's going on and keep your finger on the pulse of your school as a school administrator. And if you don't do that, you won't make it if you don't know what's happening in your building. So although we're required to do formal observations for the evaluative system, but you know, much more important to be doing those walkthroughs. And to Steve's point, it would be hard if you've been in that room or your AP's been in that room on a regular basis. It would be hard to not know whether this is possible or not. And so I've got several other notes that I want to make, but I'll skip those for right now. When we close this one out, I'll talk about some legal things, but Steve is correct. And that's why I posed this question on Saturday, to get you thinking about, you really need to be visible. You really need to be in the classroom. That's a really big part of school administration.
And she's not gonna, I mean, Ms. Davis is not going to display a lot of this behavior necessarily in front of you. We all know that. That said, there are other way. I mean, you know, my experience, I have never been an elementary administrator or teacher. So I speak only from being, you know, in the superintendent's role of visiting elementary schools. But I always get great joy of watching the children, you know, run up and hug and talk with the principal and all this communication that goes. If you go early in the morning, you get to see the car line where the parents get say a word or two to the principal and the principal to the parents. You have all of these interactive possibilities. And I'm just kind of sitting there saying, well, if Ms. Davis is a brand new teacher, then, you know, I guess it's potential you don't have a track record, but she didn't learn this behavior overnight. It doesn't seem to me. So it just looks to me that we have an oblivious administration. That's not to say that Ms. Davis isn't a bad teacher if she's guilty of this, but you have things to I think gauge whether there's some fact to this. The other problem with this, and I've got to say, that I've used this defense before when I was a school-based administrator. We're several weeks into the school year, and this is it. I mean, one can only assume this is the first time that we've received complaints about this type of behavior. So how much truth is there in this? And all of us, I think, would be quick to say that Ms. Davis does deserve a fair investigation. So if a parent, I mean, parents who want their child in another class for whatever the reason is, they've not always been exactly truthful in their reasoning. So there has to be, Ms. Davis deserves an opportunity to speak for herself as well. But I just go back to, in a 530 student school, a principal and an assistant principal ought to know the culture of the classroom. There just aren't that many classrooms, and that's my opinion there. Who else has got a thought on this? And then we'll open the door for Dale to tell us some more.
Didn't it say in the letter that the period had been going on for several weeks, and they're just now hearing about it?
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a flag, don't you?
that's the first flag. Because as a parent, if it's happening, I'm taking care of it right then. So
Yeah.
of course now I know, some people don't think like that, but
Well, to me, the letter is the second flag. I mean, that part is going to be going on. The first flag is the letter. If this is that important, why aren't you sending the letter?
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be at the front door. Yeah.
Yeah, my ears already been burned.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, parents have been known to tell a story or two when they want their kids, when they want their kids moved. They perceive, just like we were talking Saturday, when school accountability started in 1990, after, basic ed plan 85, 84, 85, took 4 years, 5 years to do the standard course of study. Hopefully none of you are old enough to remember the old white notebooks with the North Carolina standard course of study. And so we started, somebody said, every kid gets a basic education. Somebody said, well, what does that mean? So we wrote the curriculum. Somebody said, how did we test it? And so the first thing that we did is we did homogeneous group. We stopped homogeneous group in bluebirds, robins, and buzzards in elementary school. I was an elementary principal back then. And we started doing heterogeneous grouping. And these were the kinds of things that happened daily back in that era, because I had one parent who called me and said, why is my kid in the dumb class? And I said, that your kid's not in the dumb class. Well, she said, well, sure he is. Jimmy's in there and everybody knows he's an idiot. And so you would get that constantly, and they would make up just the most ridiculous things you've ever heard in your life for that first year, especially trying to get their kids moved from one room to the other, and what they perceived was a better teacher, or a higher group of kids, or fill in the blank for the excuse here. So it's not unheard of that parents might stretch things just a hair, and kids the same way if they want to be with their friend in another room. And you have to be careful before you start launching investigations. Remember, I think Elizabeth talked about teachers have due process rights. Due process substance is what does the district say that you have to do? And then procedural is, did you do it? That's about you. Did you follow the rules? And one of the things that you have to be very careful about is just automatically assuming this happened, and start even launching an investigation before you do a little more research and look into this. First thing I'd want to do is have the parent come in and talk with me. I wouldn't, I don't like operating on letters, especially anonymous letters, but I want them to come in and talk with me first, before I did anything beyond that. But again, being out there. So I'm going to kind of launch into a little bit of the legal piece of this one. Hiring quality teachers, that was one of the first things that Elizabeth talked about. The problem is sometimes we probably all know what quality teaching is. The problem is we don't always have quality candidates. We can't make that assumption. And so Collins, I think Lee or somebody in the chat was talking about Collins, get the right people. Well, I'm not a big Collins fan because Collins is an oversimplification of the Get Sales Group of social systems model. And it assumes that you have manifest destiny, that you can do whatever you want to, but what you'll find in the school business is sometimes you don't have any candidates, much less good candidates. And so what you find is your job, unfortunately, is to make people successful. Just hiring good people. If we could all be successful if we had the people to hire, because we know what they are. But many times you don't have the opportunity to hire any people or even good people. And so you have to take what you have and try to make chicken salad out of chicken manure. That's pretty much what you have to do. And so it's all about that MTSS model, that professional growth model. Again, we have to be very legal in that model, as Elizabeth said. There's very basic steps, and when we notify, documenting, getting support, doing all those things, all that's a big part of it, because we can't just go out and hire the very best because they aren't there to be hired, number one. And number two, you may be at a school, but you don't get those. Now, the last thing is the notion of, and I'm going to have you do this as one of your activities, is talk with your HR people in your district. What is the hiring process in your district? And I'm going to argue, kind of contrary to what would be common sense, that the more of the hiring process that you put on the school, the less new and diverse you get. Because if I'm the principal and I have to do all the follow-up references, and I have to do all that work, if they're not vetted by the district when they come to me, number one, I'm going to only interview the minimum number of candidates. Unfortunately, I'm not going to pick 10. I'm going to pick 3 because that's legally I have to do 3. And if I have to do all the work, and I'm going to go with the safest one. I'm going to go with the one that best fits the notion of what we've got previously. I'm going to do that where I don't have to spend days and weeks and months trying to get me somebody. Now, having worked in in a couple of small districts and a couple of large districts, I can tell you, when I was in Rutherford and Burke, I had hair back then. I even wore a hairnet and filled in the lunchroom and served lunches. You do everything in a small district. You get no help from anybody. And it's brutally hard to hire. I worked in CMS in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Cadillac of all school districts. They did everything for you. I had an employment analyst in HR that did everything. And all I had to do was just do the interviews and pick who I wanted. I would bring in numerous people and have faculty come in, and we would look at these people and try to vet these people because I didn't have to do all the back office work. So the notion here is whatever your district does, you need to follow that legal path they set for you, what that will be. But the more you have to do, the more principals have to do, I find the less diverse they become, and the fewer folks that they actually look at and give an opportunity. Because we'll go with what's tried and true and what we know. If we have to do all this work, we're not going to do that. But again, back to the original part of the premise here, higher quality teachers. Yeah, we all know to do that if they're there. They're just not there. So what are you going to do now, hero? Well, you're going to have to induct and you're going to have to work them. You're going to have to build them into great teachers. They're not going to come to you as great teachers. You just, generally what you hope in their first year, if you're in an urban area, is that they can, that they show up to the building every day sober and in clean clothes. That's a win. I'm telling you, that's a win in urban areas. And so it's up to you after that. You're going to have to make them quality. They're not going to come to you quality. All right. So I'll get off my soapbox now. We'll move on.
All right. So we've figured out Ms. Davis. So what's the next one, Elizabeth?
The next one is on page 370, and it's write your legislators. You're a principal of a middle school that has 1225 students, and you get phone calls from the superintendent, a member of the school board, and from a local state legislator complaining about or reporting an assignment made by one of your social studies teachers. And the assignment was for students to write a highly charged letter to an identified legislator or the governor about proposed cuts to state school financing. The cuts would include reduced healthcare benefits and less state aid for teacher salaries. You investigate and find out that yes, the teacher did make that assignment, and the students were coached on the issues on which to write. The teacher arranged for the mailings, but he did not read the letters before mailing them out. So the legislator made copies, and the letters weren't bad. The students were very firm in their statements. The school board member insists that the teacher violated the school system's standard of professional conduct. Others on the board agree. The legislator doesn't seem bothered. He's just curious about what is being taught in social studies these days. Local newspaper picked up on the story. The teacher has an unblemished record, and 2 years ago won the district-wide Best Teacher Award, and his job reviews are always good to outstanding. The board members think that the teacher should be dismissed for unprofessional conduct. The superintendent has asked for your recommendation. So what is your recommendation, and on what basis do you make this recommendation? And I kind of summed up what I would do, or what I think I would do with this video. I'm going to play it. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it. Otherwise, I'll unplug my headphones. You can't hear it? Okay.
Okay, Elizabeth, we had this the other day. I think we go back out for a share screen, don't we, on this?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
We need to see this though, because you got this. This is going to be rich here.
Wait, so I leave sharing?
Unshare, then reshare, and on the when you reshare at the bottom left, click share computer sound.
Okay, reshare. Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Everybody's on the edge of the seats now to see how this is going to be.
Wait. I don't think it's gonna work. Can you see my screen?
yes.
Okay, let me know if you can hear it.
Request claim on claim number 158183. You will be.
Mr. Huff would like to talk to his office.
Now?
Sit down, Bob. I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy. Ask me why.
Okay. Why?
Why what? Be specific, Bob.
Why are you unhappy?
Your customers make me unhappy.
What? You've gotten complaints?
Complaints I can handle. What I can't handle is your customers' inexplicable knowledge of InsureCare's inner workings. They're experts, Bob, exploiting every loophole, dodging every obstacle. They're penetrating the bureaucracy.
Did I do something illegal?
No.
Are you saying we shouldn't help our customers?
The law requires that I answer no.
We're supposed to help people.
We're supposed to help our people, starting with our stockholders, Bob. Who's helping them out, huh? You know, Bob, a company
It's like an enormous clock.
is like an enormous yes, precisely. It only works if all the little cogs mesh together. Now, A clock needs to be cleaned, well lubricated, and wound tight. The best clocks have jewel movements, cogs that fit, that cooperate by design. I'm being metaphorical, Bob.
So I'm stopping it there because the other parts are not relevant. So. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So basically was that I would talk to the teacher and get some more information on the reasoning behind. I mean, the assignment seems pretty good, and I guess I guess I would be a good teacher if my students' writing was pretty strong as to make that kind of wave with it. I think I would have suggested for the teacher to read the letters before sending them out. And if the teacher doesn't have any negative reviews and was best teacher award and unblemished record, then I slap on the wrist, maybe. What are everyone else's thoughts?
Who hires and fires teachers?
District and principal? Oh,
Not
the
the
school board.
principal.
The school board. The school
Board.
board. Gotcha. So it would be their decision.
Did the teacher do anything wrong?
Not reading the letters, but no, I don't think so.
And we had a case the other day where we talked about, is it a part of the course of study? So that's question one. Where does this fit in the course of study? I need somebody to explain to me where a group of students, I've just never met a lot of students that really cared how much money teachers were paid and the resources that they were given by the legislature. I didn't think they even knew. So why is it now okay that a teacher will give all of these facts, whether they're facts or not, by the way, to students to write the legislature or a specific legislator? Why is it okay for that to happen? And why would the school board care?
They don't want bad press.
All right.
Okay, it's a social studies class, right? My thought was, is it not appropriate, or is it not in the standards or whatever, to teach students to support things like, I'm sorry, I'm about to get choked on that thing my mom just gave me, to support a cause or not activism. That's not exactly what I'm trying to say, but I mean, is that not part of, and I'm not saying that maybe she shouldn't have used that as her platform for the kids, but teaching them how to be socially conscious about what's going on, I think that's a good thing. Now, perhaps she should have done it differently, and certainly she should have read the letters, but I mean, I don't know that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. It probably is a bad thing, and I don't know.
So going off of what Stacy just said, in my chapter 15, it talks about traditional views and upholding beliefs, traditional beliefs. And I feel like any sort of protest or, especially written statements going against what is a norm is seen as bad behavior in a traditional sense. So I feel like that's maybe where it's coming off as poor.
And you might be right, but I'm just thinking about, I don't know, in the 60s, late 60s when everybody was anti-Vietnam, and there was, people coming down on both sides. But people were thinking, and people my parents' age were thinking on their own and making their own decisions. And I think a lot of times, I think that as teachers, that's what we're supposed to do, is not necessarily not tell somebody how to think, but to teach them how to put their thoughts together in a coherent way so that you can influence others, because that's what we do.
Yeah, I agree with that, Stacy, but this line right here is a little bit problematic for me. So you investigate and discover that, in fact, the teacher made such an assignment. Further investigation indicates the teacher arranged for the mailings, but did not read the letters. We've all agreed on that. And that the students have been coached on the issue.
Okay, I completely forgot that part. Yeah, that's problematic. Yes, the coaching part.
So what should we do with the teacher? We got to get Heather in tonight. So we're gonna.
I think drawn and quartered perhaps now. I don't. I was in her corner for a while, but she's pretty much got me out of it now.
So
What should we do with this teacher who's an exemplary teacher?
normally, I know at my school when things get involved, like especially like wearing mask and not wearing mask, and our waiver just has parents sign, so the students don't have to wear it. And when they were mandating last Thursday, the mask, some teachers voiced or strongly put their opinion out there to try to influence the students. I know those teachers were spoken to, and I know there was a staff it was sent out in an email. It probably should have been more of a faculty meeting. It will probably be addressed in our next faculty meeting, but just how we are, like the students look up to us, so we can provide them with the facts, but we need to sort of step away from our beliefs when we're providing the facts and let them create their own line of thinking and side where they want to.
It's my opinion, in the interest of time, that I agree, Rebecca, and that probably the email, I guess that just because of what all's on everybody's plate right now, it'd be hard to bring all the faculty together for a faculty meeting on such things, but it may be that was worthy of a faculty meeting. Of course, at your school, that's a rather large group of people, isn't it? I think for this teacher who's had a good record by all accounts here, sometimes we do things that aren't real smart. And I think we all probably, if we wanted to look ourselves in the mirror, would admit that we've all done something that we wish we hadn't in our lifetime. And so I'm not sure that this is a fireable offense. And, the superintendent can usually cool off the board members in time. Most board members they would say, you need to fire her for doing that, up until they realize that there would be a far greater public outcry if they did, because this teacher probably is well regarded in the community. So the legislature handled it. I think it could be handled, but I do think you have to make sure that teachers, and this one is as a specific, understand. And by the way, I don't think you bring everybody together to tell them, don't write your legislature as a class assignment. But making sure this teacher understands that, if you want to have them write the legislature about an issue of concern, then that's fine. And that, Stacy, I agree, is a great assignment. But when you coach them what to say, it gets a little bit less of a great assignment. So Elizabeth, do our last one. You're taking way too long.
So sorry.
I'm
Last
just
one
kidding.
is
I'm kidding. You don't know me well enough. No, I'm kidding.
It's page 372, number 23. Who gets the job? Your principal of Whistler Elementary School, a 6th grade school with a preschool program and an extended day schedule. It's April and you're interviewing for positions next fall. Each of the teachers you've interviewed have already met with a committee and been recommended for further consideration. They rate their candidates from 4 or 5, 5 being the highest rating. You only have 1 vacancy for 5th grade and 3 individuals are qualified. 2 of them have 4s and 5s, and those are very good. The 3rd one has a rating from 5 from all the teachers. In your mind, that is the best choice. She's a single mom with 2 children, elementary school age, and she's the highest rated one. But the teacher has her children enrolled in a local school sponsored by a fundamentalist church. She has expressed firm willingness not to transfer her kids to any public school. And you also know that other administrators and teachers have reservations about the quality of the school, the fundamentalist church school. And there's a general expectation in the community that teachers and administrators should have their own children in a local public school. You must make your staffing recommendations to central office by the end of the week, and it is now Tuesday. So.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah. I guess I would have to look at the pros and cons and see which decision I make will have the biggest or the least uproar. Honestly, if she's highly qualified and doesn't want her children coming to the same school, I don't mind, because she's highly qualified. And like we spoke about earlier, highly qualified teachers are rare. So I wouldn't want to give up the opportunity, but I think that would also create an uproar in the community and other people who think you should have your kids at the school you go to. I don't know.
I don't understand how they found out that her kids go to school somewhere else, or why it's appropriate for them to know that information.
That would be like somebody telling me that I can't be hired because my kids are at a Christian school. So, I mean, that's an absolute no. That has nothing to do with the decision. You've got to base it on fact. And if the fact is that she rated a 5, go with that fact. You can't bring any of the other stuff into it.
And hopefully whatever problem she has with the public school system, if we let her in there, she can fix. So, you know.
And it could very well be that somebody might even claim freedom of religion or something else, that they didn't get hired because of that. And then that's an even bigger mess.
All right. So I think this one is an interesting one too. It is troubling in the sense of the school's not good enough for my kids, but I want to teach in it. But I'm with all of you, and I think all of you have said this. I mean, I know you can't ask where your children go to school and all those things. We're not even going there. But if it's a smaller community, word's usually going to get out that you know, the children are not in public school or whatever. But our responsibility is to get the best teacher we can get, right? I mean, I don't know that that's even arguable. So, but it is troubling. I can remember going to when I went to Wilkes County, and we had a principal who applied for a central office position, but had his children in private school. And you know, thankfully I kind of got off the hook because he wasn't the best candidate for that position, because it does trouble me. Why would you want to work for Wilkes County schools if our schools aren't good enough for your children? That said, my job is to hire the best person. And what you choose as a family, there are a variety of reasons you would choose it. And it could be, you know, the student teacher ratio, class size ratio. It could be the programs that are within that school that you are sending your child. So it cannot, parental decision-making is not a part of what we determine to be the hiring mechanism. So I think if she got all fives, you better hire her. And that's my opinion. Dale, is that your opinion?
Yes. Also, the corollary to this as well is not only do you need to hire the best teacher, but whatever system that you set up, whatever algorithm you used to determine who the best candidate was, you kind of have to stick to that. If you brought teachers in and let them interview and you gave them a system or an algorithmic formula that said that at the end, whoever gets the most points is the best candidate, are you now saying that you don't value their opinion? Are you now saying that your instrument, your algorithm was flawed, that you're the village idiot? I mean, or all of the above. I don't trust y'all. Y'all don't know what you're doing and I'm stupid. So I'm going with a different direction. I mean, the whole notion, and I developed a 10-point decision-making algorithm that I took to one of my doctoral classes years ago. And Steve remembers when Gardner Webb first got in the doctoral business, we were teaching at the airport over in Charlotte and out in one of the terminals out there. And I brought this decision-making rubric in and went through all 10 points. And one of our mutual friends was actually a doctoral student in that class. And when we got through, JB said, well, that's all well and good, but you need an 11th point in your algorithm in case you just want to go with the other one over here that you like better. Now, why would we go through the system if we were going to pick this one to start with? One of the notions here is if you've set up a system and you've got teachers and you've developed your algorithm of how you're going to make your decision, it is not a good idea to just say, well, I don't trust you. I don't believe in you. I'm going to go a different direction. Then you should have just went the different direction to start with. And so that's that part of it as well, is that you submarine yourself with your faculty. But your number one job is to find the best person for the job, period. That's what you're there for. That's legally what you're charged with. And if it ever got out and EEOC got a hold of it that you brought something else that's illegal into the decision-making process, you lose your house. It's just that simple.
All right, Heather, let's wrap it up with yours, and Rebecca, you will do next Tuesday. Puts us a full week behind, but that's okay because these are good case studies. And I thank you all for participating tonight. Elizabeth, good job. I did notice in the meme though, that in the video that you showed, that Bob looked an awful lot like Dale Lamb to me. And I picked up on that, and I thought that was a really smooth move to put Dale in there.
Can I call something to your attention real quick? While Elizabeth was doing her case studies, it occurred to me that I have been assigned the exact same 3 case studies as Elizabeth. And I panicked and I went back to the assignment and I was like, nope, they're the exact same.
I see it.
So,
you're right.
If you would like to look over that maybe at some time this week. And
yeah, I'm gonna
just
send
shoot me
it. I'll send it to you when we're off, Ann. I apologize.
That's okay. But yeah, then I can do some different
on my part.
case
Thank you for
studies.
noticing that.
Thanks.
I'll get it to you tonight.
All right, so let me see if I can actually get this to share perfectly. Can you guys see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So mine kind of piggybacks a little bit on Elizabeth's. Once you get the people in the building, what do you do with them? So my chapter was all about the deployment of the instructional staff in the building and how we maximize the people who are in the building. And so this quote actually started the chapter off. Inherent in any good staffing design is optimal utilization of staff. Staff planning must take into account the present needs and functions of the members of the organization, as well as the school's long-range goals and plans that might modify hiring practices in the future. And I immediately thought about the conversation that we had with, I believe it was Saturday, with school improvement plans and understanding where you are at the moment, but also where you're going in terms of how you're using the staff in your building. So one of the big things in this chapter was the empowerment of teachers, and there's a really fine line that you have to walk in order to maximize the quality of instruction in the school. Not paying enough attention to what's going on is a bad thing, and can create inequities in the way teaching occurs. Giving too much control takes away the autonomy and often kills the motivation of the staff. So it's really important as an administrator to find the leadership and the balance of autonomy and control. You have to be willing to give a little bit to make it function the way it needs to. The other big central piece of this chapter was staffing in terms of developing professional learning communities. And after working through a lot of the classes we've had, we know how important PLCs are. And some of the main points it brought up is that self-contained classrooms, which you typically see in elementary school, really do isolate teachers in terms of how often they're able to communicate and be able to bounce ideas off of each other. So the way that your staff is organized can either really enhance those opportunities or inhibit them. And as an administrator, it's our role to establish those expectations and norms and set up an opportunity for those PLCs to be able to happen when you're thinking about how you want to spread your staff out across the building. So there were a couple of patterns, and the chapter went through elementary, middle, and secondary education. And again, we kind of talked about the fact that single unit classrooms restrict the ability of PLCs. And the benefit of organizing the team is having common planning, being able to have the voices of multiple teachers, and just a collective ownership of the students in the building across multiple teachers. So an elementary school example, and middle school too, when you're thinking about how you want to staff, you need to consider several things. So first of all, how many students are in your building, and what the class size regulations are in the state or district, because that can have a big impact on how you need to shift staff around and the type of support that needs to happen. The allocation of teaching positions given to you, and then the subgroups that you have. You've got special ed, free reduced lunch, and English language learners, and all of those fall under special headings, and there are specific requirements around service times, and free and reduced lunch gives you opportunity to have Title I funding. If you're, I think the number is 40% or greater free and reduced, it gives you Title I funds, which can help support staffing and putting extra human capital in the building. So when we're thinking about that, we want to consider the special education positions. Is it more beneficial for students with their IEPs and these teachers to do pull out or inclusion? And making sure that you're organizing the students appropriately, because that's going to impact how we staff the positions we need. With Title I, looking at how we can intentionally group students to maximize impact, and then thinking about how we utilize the ELL staff and the specialists. So an example, there were 3 different examples given in the book. So the first one was for an elementary school where K5 is K5, there's 500 students, and it kind of gives us a glimpse of what the makeup of the student body is. This particular school is at 45% enrollment for free and reduced lunch, which makes them Title I eligible. And they have 52 special education students, so approximately 10% of their student body population. So in this situation, they are allotted 27 teachers, and the regulations on class sizes in K2 is 20, 3-5 is 25. They have 2 special education teachers, 2 Title I positions, the ELL teacher, and then specialists. And then they also have money available for instructional aides. So when they look at the staffing, the enrollment is given, and this is something important to think about. So they're able to allot the number of teachers for each grade level and the approximate staff size. And the thing I think that really stuck out here was in first grade, the enrollment versus the number of teachers. If they split it, they hit it right at 20, which is a large class for first grade. So one of the was possibly doing art and music at halftime teaching position to minimize the class size in first grade. So that's something to think about when you start approaching larger class sizes. If funding is not available to get an extra teacher, you may have to look at the logistics of how you're working through things like your specialists and whether you need that full time or if it'd be more beneficial to make adjustments like that. And so here, when they group students, they started thinking about how to group their special ed and regular education teachers. So they ended up grouping them within 2 teachers instead of across all 5, and then moving a lot of the students who are Title I eligible onto other teachers, and keeping the L students in one classroom to be able to maximize the amount of time that that particular area of personnel and specialists are working with that group of students. So as an administrator, when you start thinking about how to deploy the staff throughout the building, it's important to think about where you get your biggest bang from the buck. If a special education teacher is having to go into 5 different rooms on the same grade level, they're not going to be able to have as much time, and you're going to end up having students do more pull out to meet the needs on IEPs. So then for that one, I talked about the cutting the music and the intentional grouping. And what the big thing in this particular chapter it talked about with the way the students were grouped is they spread out students so that there's a more balanced situation in each classroom. So you don't have all your higher performing students in one classroom and all the lower performing students in the other classroom. So it was intentionally and flexibly done to make sure that there's a balanced achievement levels in each classroom. So then in a middle school situation, you don't look at it in terms of grade levels, but you look at it in terms of the teachers you have for each specialty. So if you have 6 language arts teachers, social studies, all the way down, you have to then think about how do we spread these teachers out across the grade levels to make it work for what we need. And this offers a little bit more unique opportunities because you can have PLCs on grade levels. You can do it by teams, or you can do it in content area, or you could have all 3 of those pieces moving. So when you look at a more broken down plan, again, you have special education students on one team and your ELL and your Title I students who are not special education eligible on the other team to help kind of spread out students who may be struggling. And then with that, this particular school had a Title I assistant and a special ed assistant that could go to each team individually to, again, maximize the human capital on each team. So it allows for that concentrated use of staff for the subgroups, which is really beneficial. And again, you can see you could have the 6th grade team as a whole. You can look at each team and each grade level, and then you can look at content in terms of PLCs there as well. Again, secondary schools typically split into departments. So you have your core subjects, you have a reading department, math, science, and then you also have electives that are typically somewhat grouped together. One of the big things it talked about in secondary schools is the idea of a department head, placing responsibility and a leadership role on a selected member of the department. And on page 234, there's a list of like 25 or 30 different responsibilities you could give a department head. It's certainly not exhaustive, but there were a lot of different ideas and leadership roles that someone could step into to support, again, that PLC situation. And then some schools in secondary education opt to create interdisciplinary teams to support the integration of a curriculum, which allows for flexible grouping and better control of just students in general. And this would be where it's almost like creating a mini team within the school. So here's an example of what it may look like in secondary. And the difference between this and what you would see in a middle school is the fact that a language arts teacher might teach multiple grade levels. The benefit to this is being able to capitalize on the strengths of the teachers. If you have data that shows that a teacher is really good at growing struggling students, you may give them different grade levels with struggling students because that's where you're going to get, again, the biggest bang for your buck. Or if they're great with the middle of the road kids, then you can be a little more fluid in how you assign students to teachers with a setup like this. So again, the chapter kind of wraps it up and brings it back to the idea of the professional learning communities and staffing so that you are maximizing the opportunities for teachers to engage in this. Some of the things that are big factors in it is making sure that when you set up, how you're deploying the staff, you provide adequate planning time and that you utilize it efficiently. And it's really important as administrators that the expectation is set early, that this is what it looks like, this is how it's going to go, this is what we're going to accomplish, so that there's not a question about what the expectation is when teachers engage in those professional learning communities. And then it gave an example of a way that you could kind of foster almost like a schedule with PLCs, where they're setting goals at the very beginning for either the semester or the quarter of the year. And then the next meeting, they start looking at like the instruction that they're going to do. So developing kind of the overall units, and then looking at how they want to plan for those individual units. Looking at students who, the situational meeting would be looking at students who may be struggling or who have specific needs and how you would adjust it from that. And then the evaluation meeting is looking at the data and just evaluating in general how everything that you planned really went so that you can make adjustments moving forward. And it really just cycles. Once you have that evaluation meeting, you're setting new goals for them. So I thought that was just a really good flow of how to facilitate some of the PLC conversations, whether it's grade level, interdisciplinary, on teams. I think this really fits K-12 in terms of the cycle that we want them to think through as we set up the way we staff. And then the last thing, just a few things to remember, how we plan to use the staff really rests on what is being taught, how it's being taught, and how we need to group the students. We can lay the best plans for how we want to staff, but the students in the building are going to drive the needs. And so you have to think about how to structure the staff. Giving opportunities for PLCs maximizes the flexibility for instructional programming, and having those PLCs in place is going to support new teachers, struggling teachers, teachers who may be new to the content but not new to teaching. It supports as new programs are introduced, because we know education is like a revolving door for curriculum and programs. So it's just good to have those opportunities to let teachers be in PLCs. And it's really important as you think about how to staff your building and how to deploy them in the building, to think about the opportunities they're going to have to engage in a PLC. And really just think about the extra people in the building who aren't classroom teachers. What do you do with them? What's the best use of them in that building? And it's going to be used. A variety of patterns are going to be used, but you have to figure out what works best for the situation you're in with the students in your building. So that's it for the chapter. The case studies, I had 2 of them. So case study 15 was please change James.
Heather, let me interrupt. So we're cognizant of time. So you're going to do 15. We're going to do this one, and then that's going to wrap us up tonight. And then Ann's going to do 17 on next Tuesday.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
In this one, you are the new principal. You've just taken over a principal that had 30+ years of experience. She is retired and moved to whatever wonderful island she wants to live on after she jet sets the world. So you're the new principal, and the school houses 1st through 5th grade. The PTO president contacts you via email to welcome you. And at the close of the letter in the email, she indicates that she is not happy with the placement of her child. She states that her child has specific learning needs, but it wasn't explicit whether or not it was like special education or if it was just needed, minor accommodations in the class. But she said that the teacher she is with is a level 1 novice teacher. So not necessarily level 1 in terms of growth of students, but this is a beginning teacher who doesn't have the experience. And she wants her moved to a teacher who is considered a master teacher. She thinks that level 1 and 2 teachers are ill-equipped to meet the needs of her child. And there's a specific master teacher in the building that she has requested that her child be with. She said that the predecessor, your predecessor has indicated that the child would be with that level 3 teacher, and they were very disappointed that that did not happen. So she has asked you to fulfill that promise and move the child out of that classroom and into the other teacher's room.
Okay. This one is this one you can absolutely bet will happen to you when you become a new administrator in whatever school. What are the issues here?
Can I
You
can I
can't-
weigh in before we get started?
Yes.
A couple of legal things. When we get to the second half of the course, our main focus is building the master schedule, which goes along with this. Very good, Heather, tonight. But one of the things we have to realize, there's a rationale in scheduling. Federal law comes first, then state law, board policy, best EBOS or growth, and then teacher input. And one of the things that we have to understand is we don't have near the flexibility that this chapter would lead you to believe with federal positions. You can't split them, you can't share them. They can't teach children that aren't in their head count. There is a lot of rules that we'll get into later. We'll actually have a case study about the inclusion model. Your district determines the model, whether it's inclusion, mainstreaming, or self-contained. Your district does that. You don't get to make that decision at your school, and federal personnel can only teach in their children. And so this idea of splitting or sharing, you can do that with state or local positions. You cannot do that with federal positions. So let's be clear about that to start with, that if this child is an identified EC or 504 kid, you don't get to choose what model or who they're with. If this is just my kid needs special attention, that's a different story. But we need to be careful to understand the legal ramifications of dealing with federal programs, which are the most restrictive in terms of how you can use their personnel.
All right. So the level, the novice teacher, we know we have that. What's the issue with that the new principal is facing here?
Apparently there was a promise made by the former principal, and this parent wants him to, or her to, keep it. But also that's the PTO president, and you don't want to make them mad, I guess, right from jump. So
why not?
Well, I've already called the media in on mine, so I'm I'm just trying to think like, I'm supposed to think, and I don't think you want to,
All right. Stacey, you're exactly right on both of them. We've got an unkept promise according to the PTO president. And so this is the PTO president, which in some schools they're chosen because nobody else will do it. But in many schools, it is the most active parent, the one most involved in helping the school to get things and be recognized in the way it should be. So yeah, you don't want to make the PTO president mad. And then you've got this promise.
I think it's a slippery slope here, because I feel like if you bend and give anything to the PTO president, then it's going to be the secretary, and then the treasurer, and then the neighbor across the street, and word's going to spread that, hey, all I had to do is ask and I got what I wanted. And I think, in terms of the case study says specifically that says Jen requires some special help, as I'm sure you've seen in her records. So if it isn't a matter of it being an IEP or a 504 student, you really might just be bound to being in that classroom, because that's where those students are to get the services they need. And there's not really an option. But I just feel like if you give in, you might be unpopular for not, but if you give in, I think it's going to become a consistent request from multiple parents all the time. And I just would hate to set that expectation as a new principal of a school, because then you're giving them the power.
Yeah.
I think also you can go on PLCs that, the level 1 teacher is going to be working closely with the level 3 teacher. And so they're going to be lesson planning the same and have the same strategies implemented into their classroom. And then maybe ask the PTO president to volunteer some and be maybe class mom or something, to, sort of appease her with involvement in the classroom as well.
The last, exactly. I think you say, well, why don't you go in and check? You're making a judgment on this new teachers without knowing, and we do have support mechanisms in place, and we have to make sure that we correctly assign the student to the right teacher. The other thing is, and this is the last thing, Dale and I have experienced this many times, where we followed somebody. Every new job that Dale and I have had in administration followed somebody else, and it was just amazing, the parade of people who come in and tell me what my predecessor promised, and it's just a given, and it really it happens in the classroom as well. With and a lot of you have experienced this, where maybe you're new to a school and some parent will say, well, Ms. Jones promised that my child would blah, blah, blah. Or if it's athletics or arts thing, the person in charge of that promised my child would get to play, or my child would be the first chair trumpet, or my child would be the lead vocalist in the play. So there are all kinds of these promises that we're accused of, or your predecessor, my predecessor has been accused of making. The truth of the matter is, promises by predecessors aren't worth a whole lot. And you, as cold as that sounds, you've got to do what you've got to do with what you have right now. And you may make some enemies, but they'll either come around, or that's okay if you have an enemy. You'll at least be respected for doing the right thing in your book. So, all right, friends, it's 8 o'clock. This is a kind of a quick end. Heather, I'm sorry we had to hurry with yours there at the end, but I do try to stay with the 8 o'clock piece. Your presentations were terrific tonight, as we are now accustomed, and thank you so much for that. And it goes fast for Dale and me. So on next Tuesday, Ann will do her chapter 12 with case studies 1 and 17, and Rebecca will then come back and do her chapter 15 with case studies 2 and 28. And then we may get into the case studies that we were going to do. So be somewhat, well, you know what? Let me just revamp. Y'all gonna be exhausted next week anyway. That's what we're gonna do next week. Ann and Rebecca, you lead us next week. And if we get through early, then I'll be happy, and Ann and Rebecca will be heroes. And then I will redo how we will do the case studies for the final 2 sections. Is that fair with everybody? And I'm overwhelmed with your discussion. You've done a great job, and I thank you for that, because I know you're exhausted. So let's call it a night. Dale, you got anything?
Good night.
Good night, everybody. See you next Tuesday.